The dust rose like a golden cloud under Pamplona's relentless sun. The air smelled of sweat, fear, and pure adrenaline. 100 hearts beat in unison, but only one of them knew it was about to change forever. The black bull emerged from the darkness like a storm of muscle and fury. Its eyes, two burning embers, scanned the crowd of children waiting for it in the improvised bullring. The silence was so dense it could be cut with a knife. Not even the wind dared to blow. Among the crowd of pale faces and trembling legs, there was one different, a boy barely 12 years old, with his eyes closed, breathing slowly. While the others instinctively recoiled, he remained motionless, as if he were a marble statue planted in the hot sand. The bull snorted. The sound expanded through the air like a primordial roar, awakening something ancient in everyone present. Mothers covered their eyes from the improvised stands, fathers clenched their fists, and the hundred children felt death looking them directly in the eyes. No one knew that in the next few minutes, one of those children would write a legend that would be told for generations. A story that would challenge everything they thought they knew about courage, destiny, and the power of a promise, whispered in the darkness of a small room, 3 days before that moment. The bull kicked the sand. The countdown had begun. His name was Miguel Santa Cruz, and he had a promise to keep. 3 days earlier, his little sister, Carmen, had closed her eyes forever in a hospital bed that smelled of disinfectant and despair. Barely 8 years old, she had fought an illness that doctors couldn't pronounce correctly. In her last hours, Carmen had whispered in a broken voice, "Miguel, when I get to heaven, I want you to know that you are the bravest of all. Promise me you'll touch the bull of San Fermin. Promise me you'll show that we Santa Cruz fear nothing." Miguel had taken her cold hand and promised the impossible. Now, standing in that improvised arena where 100 children had come to prove their courage in a clandestine tradition that had existed for decades, he knew there was no turning back. The organizers had been clear. "It's just a game, kids. The first one to touch the bull and get out alive wins. But remember, no one is forcing you to be here." Don Esteban, the bull's owner, had tried to dissuade Miguel that morning. "Boy, that animal weighs 500 kilos. It has gored adult men. This is no joke." But Miguel had replied with a chilling coldness. "I didn't come here to play, sir. I came to keep a promise." Now, as the bull prepared to charge, Miguel closed his eyes and murmured, "Carmen, this is for you." From the improvised wooden stands, Elena Santa Cruz watched her son with her heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. She had tried to stop him. That morning, she had begged, she had screamed, but Miguel had the same determined look his father had had before leaving for war years ago. "Mom," Miguel had told her as he put on the traditional white shirt, "Carmen is watching me from somewhere. I can't fail her now." Elena knew her son better than anyone. She knew that behind that apparent coldness lay a heart broken by loss. Miguel had been the perfect older brother. He had read stories to Carmen during feverish nights. He had sold his toys to buy medicine. He had slept on the hospital floor for weeks. Since Carmen died, Miguel barely spoke. He only obsessively repeated the stories his grandfather told them about the ancient bullfighters of the Santa Cruz family, as if searching in the past gave him strength to face the present. "That boy carries pain like a cross," Doña Maria, the neighbor, had told her 3 days before the funeral. "But he also carries something else, something not all children have." Elena knew exactly what she meant. Miguel had that strange spark in his eyes, that silent determination that turned ordinary people into legends. It was the same spark she had seen in Carmen's eyes when she fought the illness without ever complaining. Now, as she watched her son standing motionless in front of 500 kilos of fury, Elena whispered a prayer she had learned from her own mother. "Holy Virgin, if you have to take someone else, let it be me." Dr. Ramirez had arrived at that dusty arena by chance. As a doctor at the hospital where Carmen had died, he knew the Santa Cruz story. He had been the one who had to tell Elena that there was nothing more to do, that her little daughter would fade like a candle in the wind. He remembered Miguel's reaction perfectly that night. While Elena cried inconsolably, the boy had remained silent, looking out the hospital window, as if seeking answers in the stars. "Doctor," he had asked in a serene voice, "do you think the dead can see the living?" Ramirez had replied with the professional coldness he had cultivated for years. "Miguel, when people die, they simply cease to exist. There is nothing after." But now, seeing the boy standing in front of that bull as if he were invincible, the doctor began to question everything. There was something in Miguel's posture, in the way he breathed, in the strange peace that radiated from his face, that defied all medical logic. Perhaps, Ramirez thought as he adjusted his first aid kit, there are forces that medicine cannot explain. Perhaps love transcends death in ways that we, scientists, do not understand. For 3 days, he had tried to convince himself that Miguel was just a traumatized child acting irrationally. But something inside him, something that had been silenced for years of medical rationalism, whispered an uncomfortable truth. Some human beings are capable of things that defy all explanation. As he watched the bull preparing for the charge, Ramirez murmured something he never thought he would say. "Carmen, if you're really there, take care of your brother." While Miguel prepared for the decisive moment in the arena 3 kilometers away, Father Alfonso ran through the cobbled streets of Pamplona with a pounding heart. He had heard rumors about the clandestine competition and knew he had to get there before it was too late. Alfonso had met Carmen during her last days. The girl had confessed something to him that had marked him forever. "Father, I know I'm going to die, but before I go, I need my brother to understand that he doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. Courage is not measured by touching bulls." Now, as his shoes hit the asphalt, Alfonso remembered the answer he had given her. "My daughter, sometimes people need to do extraordinary things to heal extraordinary wounds." In the arena, the bull had begun to move. The other 99 children slowly retreated, creating an ever-widening circle around the beast. But Miguel remained motionless, as if in a trance. Don Esteban, the bull's owner, shouted from the stands, "Children, get away! The animal is agitated." Meanwhile, Father Alfonso had gotten a taxi to the Herrera farm fast, he yelled to the driver. "It's a matter of life or death." In the arena, Miguel slowly opened his eyes. The bull was less than 20 meters away, snorting and kicking the dirt. The other children had formed a human barrier near the wooden fences, ready to jump if necessary. Time had divided into 2 dimensions. One where a priest fought traffic to save a soul, and another where a 12-year-old boy prepared to fulfill the most dangerous promise of his life. The bull took the first step towards Miguel. The final countdown had begun. The world stopped. Miguel closed his eyes, and for an instant everything disappeared. The bull's roar, the terrified screams of the other children, the dust rising like a golden curtain. In that absolute silence, he heard a familiar, sweet voice whisper in his ear, "Miguel, brother, you don't have to prove anything anymore." He opened his eyes, and there was Carmen. Not as he remembered her in the hospital, pale and fragile, but as she had been on her best days, with her messy pigtails, her mischievous smile, and that special sparkle in her eyes that made everything seem possible. "Carmen," Miguel murmured, tears rolling down his dusty cheeks. "I never wanted you to do this," she said, extending her hand to him. "I just wanted you to know that you are the bravest brother in the world, not for touching bulls, but for taking care of me when I needed you most." The bull was now 5 meters away, snorting and preparing to charge. But Miguel no longer saw it. He only saw his little sister, radiant and full of peace. "Do you forgive me?" Miguel asked. "There's nothing to forgive, silly." Carmen laughed with that crystalline laugh he missed so much. "But now you have to live. You have to live for both of us." Miguel reached out to where Carmen had been, but his fingers only touched the warm evening air. When he blinked, she was gone. The bull was a meter away. Miguel smiled for the first time in 3 days. It was not a smile of fear or defiance. It was a smile of understanding, of peace, of someone who had finally found what he was looking for. He extended his hand towards the bull with supernatural calm. Father Alfonso arrived just as Miguel reached out to the bull. He jumped from the truck before it fully stopped and ran towards the fence, shouting, "Miguel, stop! Your sister told me something." But his words were lost in the deafening roar of the crowd. The bull had lowered its head, preparing to charge, when something extraordinary happened. Miguel gently touched the animal's snout. For a moment, that seemed eternal. The bull stood still, as if it had recognized something in the boy's gaze. Its fierce eyes softened, its agitated breathing calmed, and for the first time all afternoon, silence reigned in the arena. Father Alfonso arrived running to the fence, shouting desperately, "Miguel, Carmen asked me to tell you that she is proud of you just as you are. You don't need to prove anything." But Miguel had already heard those words. Not from the priest's mouth, but from his little sister's lips, in a dimension where love transcends death and promises are fulfilled in unexpected ways. The bull, as if it had completed a sacred mission, slowly moved away from the boy and walked to the other end of the arena. The 100 children remained in absolute silence, witnesses to something they could never explain in words. Miguel turned to the stands, sought his mother's eyes, and smiled. It was the first time Elena had seen her son smile since Carmen's death. Dr. Ramirez, who had been preparing for the worst, slowly put away his medical bag. There were no wounds to heal. There was only a miracle to behold. Don Esteban, the bull's owner, slowly descended from the stands with his eyes filled with tears he didn't understand. He had raised fighting bulls for 40 years. He had seen charges that shattered adult men, but he had never witnessed anything like this. "In 40 years, raising these animals," he murmured in a broken voice, "I have never seen Emperor behave that way. That bull has killed 3 adult men, and now—" He approached Miguel, who remained motionless in the center of the arena, his hands still extended to where the bull had been. The other 99 children slowly surrounded him, not with envy, but with the reverent respect given to the sacred. "Boy," Don Esteban said in a trembling voice, "what did you say to my bull?" Miguel looked at him with serene eyes, eyes that seemed to have aged years in a few minutes. "I didn't say anything, sir. I just asked him to let me keep my promise." Father Alfonso had managed to jump the fence and ran towards Miguel. When he reached his side, he hugged him tightly, as if to protect him from something that had already passed. "Miguel, my son," he whispered in his ear, "your sister visited me in a dream last night. She told me to tell you that true courage isn't in touching bulls, but in knowing when to stop." Miguel nodded slowly. "I know, Father. She told me." Don Esteban made a decision that would change his life forever. "From today, this tradition ends. No child will ever face my bulls again. What happened here, this wasn't a competition. It was something else." The 100 children applauded, but it wasn't an applause of victory. It was the silent applause of those who had witnessed a miracle. Miguel walked slowly towards his mother, who had come down from the stands with open arms. When Elena hugged him, she felt that she was recovering not only her son, but also a part of Carmen she thought was lost forever. "Mom," Miguel whispered against her shoulder, "I saw her. Carmen was here. She told me I don't have to carry her death anymore." Elena gently pulled him away to look into his eyes. In them there was no longer that empty darkness that had terrified her for 3 days. There was pain, yes, but there was also peace. Her son had returned from the abyss. Dr. Ramirez approached the family, no longer as the skeptical doctor he had been, but as a man transformed by the inexplicable. "Miguel, what you did today has no scientific explanation. That bull should have killed you." "Doctor," Miguel replied with a wisdom that did not correspond to his 12 years, "there are things that science cannot measure, like the love I feel for my sister, or the promise I made to her." Don Esteban approached with Emperor walking docilely beside him like a giant dog. The bull that minutes before had been a machine of destruction now seemed like a domesticated animal. "Boy," Don Esteban said, "I want to give you something." He took a small golden medal with the image of San Fermin from his pocket. "This medal belonged to my father and to my father's father. I had never given it to anyone, but I think Carmen wants you to have it." Miguel took the medal with trembling hands. At that moment, a soft breeze blew through the arena, lifting the dust in small swirls that danced around the 100 children as if it were stardust. Everyone felt the same thing, a sweet and luminous presence that enveloped them like a warm embrace. Carmen had said goodbye. That afternoon, as the sun began to set behind the Navarra mountains, 100 children returned home transformed into men. They had witnessed something that would change their lives forever. They had seen how love can transform fury into tenderness, fear into courage, and death into a new kind of life. Miguel Santa Cruz never again spoke of fighting bulls. He became a doctor like Dr. Ramirez, who became his mentor after that day. For years he worked in the same hospital where Carmen had died, saving the lives of children battling impossible diseases. Don Esteban sold all his bulls except Emperor, who lived the rest of his days peacefully grazing in the green fields of Pamplona. They say that sometimes, when the wind blew softly through the trees, the old bull would raise its head as if listening to the laughter of a little girl. Father Alfonso wrote Miguel's story in the church's Book of Miracles, but the true legend was told by the 100 children who were there, and their children, and their children's children. Because there are stories that transcend time, promises that defy death, and love so pure that they can tame even the fiercest beasts. The story of Miguel and Carmen reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous promises are the ones that lead us to discover our true courage, not the courage to face bulls, but the courage to heal, to forgive ourselves, to keep living when it seems that everything has been lost. What promise do you hold in your heart? To whom do you owe that gesture of love you've been postponing? Because in the end, we all have our own bull to face and our own miracle waiting to be discovered.